So what I'm going to do here is just show you how to sample a few drum sounds and put them into a patch. What I say in this video applies to the S range, the S770, the S750 and the S760. The S750 and 70 operating systems are exactly the same. The S760, which came a little later, has a few additions, but in general you won't have any problems emulating what happens in this video. The whole sampling process and patch process is exactly the same. So first thing we do, we're going to go to the sampling page, and first thing it asks you, set a name. So I know that I'm going to be sampling, well, first thing I'm going to do is put the monitor on actually. Okay, there we go. And the first sound I'm going to sample is that kick drum. So give it a name. There are a number of methods of sampling. You've got analog, digital, you've got the type of sample, auto, self-explanatory, manual, previous, this is basically capture. So just like Ableton's new capture, and this was done in the mid-80s. So this S range I always felt was kind of ahead of its time compared to the other samplers of the day. And there's another one, One Way. I never ever used it. I've used auto, manual and previous, so but I'm going to use manual here, obviously analog. Incidentally, you can trigger by level, MIDI, pedal. I'm going to set 3 seconds should be enough for any of these samples. In fact, one would be enough, but I'll leave it at 3. And I'm ready to go. Oh, and obviously there's mono and stereo sampling. This video, stereo sampling is just exactly the same, but I'm doing all this in mono. And obviously when you sample in stereo, it uses 2 voices. That's 2 samples left and right. But you don't treat them individually. They'll work as one sample, which again is kind of ahead of its time for the day that it came out. Right, so we're going to be doing mono. I'm going to hit ready and find the sample I want to record, which is that one, the kick drum. I'm going to hit start, play the kick, and there it is. So it pretty much caught the start point. I don't detect it's like cut off the transient. So I'm happy with that, but just in case I'm going to go to truncate. I'm going to set the edit step level, like that's moving in basically samples. When it's just at 1, you got 10, 100, 1000, 10,000. You can see it moving quite a bit there. But I'll only need 100 for this. I'm going to knock the start point back just a couple of 100 samples, just in case. I'm going to execute that. Normalize. Probably don't need to in this one, but I'm doing it anyway. Back to truncate. Now we've got a zoom level. Well, it's really just the start I want to. Get back into that page. And as you can see, I can zoom in a bit more. And there's the 200, see? So it was pretty much bang on. Just going to knock it back 10. Right, so that's the start point. Now, what we have to do is we have to put that sample in a partial. And we go to the partial page, common, and here it is. Now, here is where I could put 4 samples. There's the kick, I'll just put that there. If I had other samples, so this could be used for layering, and you can tune these and do all sorts of things, and lots of individual editing on each partial if you want, or sample. Sorry, that's a partial can be made up of 1 to 4 samples. So I want the kick on here. And I want to get rid of that tuning, because wherever I put this in a patch, it could be anywhere on the key span, and I don't want it changing pitch. I want it to stay the same. And I'll just turn the pitch off, and there you go. This, obviously, I can individually tune samples if I want here. That's like semitones, and this is fine tuning. Here you can do output assignment, panning, all sorts of things. Right, but not that it's a problem, but I now need to name this partial. Right, so I'm going to go into name, and it just so happens because the last sample I named was kick, I can use that same name. So that's there, I've done that, and that's fine. But I want to avoid this step. It seems to me because I'm not creating like multi-layered samples here. This is like you could have a kick drum with different velocities, a snare drum, a piano, and so on. But I tend to use the sampler in a much more simplistic fashion. And if I want like multi-sampled pianos, I'm not going to use an S770 or 50 or 60 for that. I can, but I'm also limited by this sampler only has 16 megabyte of samples, which was amazing back in the mid 80s, but not so amazing these days. So I use it more for individual sounds and individual drums and all that, much smaller sounds. But I want to avoid this step, right? And this is where the S range shines. You can sample from like directly, just raw sample. You can sample from a partial. And what that does, go up to the command page here, sampling, see? And what that does, when I name this sample, it's also going to name the partial. So I'm going to name this. And by the way, you'll notice it said same name found. Obviously, you have to have a different name. So I'm going to call this hat1, because I'm going to wait to sample a hi-hat. All the parameters are the same as when I sampled the kick drum, so I'm ready to go. Okay, let's take this hi-hat. Oh, no, sorry. Oh, right. Error. I was supposed to go to the next sample slot, so I'm going to go back and rename that kick. So as you can see, even I, a total Jedi on this machine, can make errors. I'm not a Jedi, actually. No, yes, I am. I'm going to disagree with myself there. But I've got into a habit of working where I bypass a lot of the stuff. It's all shortcut stuff I do, which I'm not really going into just now. I pretty much sample from a patch. So I bypass the partial and patch split pages quite often, unless I'm doing something like a drum kit. Right, so now we're ready. Let me just check though. Yeah, I'm ready. Okay. And I'm fairly confident that's it hasn't like cut off the transient, so I'm going to truncate that as it is, and I'm going to normalize. Now when I go to the partial page, remember we already made the kick, but we made that by sampling and then adding it to a partial. The point of the partial page is I could do this, you see, but I don't want to do that just now. I've just put the hi-hat in with the kick, right? Would be better if I had a slightly different tone of the same kick drum here, and they would be triggered via velocities, different velocities. Anyway, so the hi-hat has already been named, so it's already a partial, right? So this is a good thing. So I'm going to continue working like this for just now. So back up to command, sampling. And it's already selected the next free slot. I've got another hi-hat. I'm just going to throw that in. Ready. Yeah, this one. Yeah, that's fine. I'm going to truncate that. If we go to the partial page, there it is. Right? So I'm going to go to the next free slot, sampling from the partial page. Give it a name. This is going to be clap, hand clap. Okay, we're ready to go. I'm going to drag the endpoint because sometimes the release of a sample, when it gets below a certain threshold, the sampler kind of truncates that away. You don't want that. Right, I know that's going to be fine. I probably did way too much. I mean, then the samples are right here. I mean, obviously the WAV display isn't quite like what we get in our DAWs today. Right, so there you go. I've got a few drum sounds, but I don't want to put them all in a separate patch. I'm going to put them in a patch of their own. So we've got a patch. How I'm getting there, by the way, is index. If we go to the main performance page, you know, index is where you can pretty much reach any page. So there are many ways you can reach different pages with this. I mean, you can do it through here, depending on what you want to do. If I hit exit here, it opens up that. There's a lot of ways, you know. But anyway, I've gone to the index page because I know that patch common is down here. There you go. And split. Now, just straight away, I'm just going to give this a name. Kit 1. And again, even this, you know, I'm using a mouse here, the Roland S range mouse, and you know, this little keyboard thing is just so good for naming stuff. It just speeds up the process. Anyway, so I've created that name. I think the CR stands for create. And right, so here's the patch, right, and here's the partial section. So there's nothing on this keyboard at the moment. Nothing at all. And this is where this page is really good compared to other samplers of the era. So I want to put this kick on a key somewhere. Now I can do it by, I'm not going to do it, but I could just, I don't know if you can see that. You can see the notes changing here. So wherever I put the mouse, I would hit the right mouse button and then the left one, and it would put the sample on that key. Or I could simply drag. I'm not going to do it because it'll create that patch. I could just hold the left mouse button and the right mouse button down at the same time, drag along, and it'll put that on as many keys as I want. Alternatively, which I think is the best method for this type of sampling when you're creating a kit, is you hold down the right mouse button. You see that come up there, set by MIDI. So I'm going to put this kick drum there. You see that little red dot? And there it is. Right? Now I'm going to take one of the hi-hats and I'm going to put it there. Now obviously that hi-hat has pitched down, but we're going to fix that in a second. I should have did that beforehand. And I'm going to put that other hi-hat there. And just for simplicity, I'll put the hand clap next to it. Right. So I need to go back into the partials. This is where you do a lot of the like ADSR editing, the filters, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So the kick drum, there's no release on it. And I'm always going to want release on that, so I'm just going to set it. So you go into the TVA page, attack, decay, sustain, and release. I want release here. You can drag it here. See, again, ahead of its time. Couldn't do this with other samplers. I think maybe the Fairlight, you were able to do this sort of stuff, but never having owned one, I can't say for certain. Now you can hear there's a little, I don't know if you can, but there's a tiny little click at the end of that kick drum there. Now I could go and edit that click out, which I would probably do because I like the long release on this kick. But just for quickness just now, like I say, I'd really go and edit that because I like the end, the sustain, the release on the sort of heavy low end. And even just adjusting the release there is kind of taking that away. But for just now, you get the idea, right? I might as well just put some release on that. And that one. Right, so that's fine. Now, to prevent these samples, I don't want these samples changing pitch depending on where I put them on the keyboard. So I already turned the kick pitch off. I'm going to do it with the hi-hats and the claps. But I can go and pitch, you know. This is so that regardless of where I put them on across the span of the keyboard, they're not going to change pitch. But I can, of course, change pitch on individual samples if I want. Right, so if we now go back to, the patch itself, there's a little kit there. And there they are. Now I think these hi-hats are a bit too loud, so I would go to partial, common. And this is where I can bring the volume down. The partial level. Or you can do it with the stereo mix level. But you may end up sending this sound through an individual output. So I always use the partial level. Right, that would be fine. I'll take this one down a bit as well. Incidentally, if you want to go right down, if you hold the left mouse button, this works for all parameters, then it gets much faster. You see that? So that's just one mouse button and then the two. 1, 2. See, all these little things Roland thought of. Very good. Right. Now we've got to patch common again. Yeah, okay. Right, so with these partials, so the patch is created and all that, right? Now we could go into the filter. Now I don't really think I would need to filter anything here, but just for experimentation purposes, let's make this hi-hat really kind of hi-hatty. So I've just basically, not that there was actually bottom end on it, but you know what I mean. I've just taken that off. Or I could filter it in another way. Whatever I like. And that's that. So you'll spend a lot of time messing around here, and the filters are actually pretty good. Right, so let's go to the main play page, and we will see the kit there. There's the MIDI channels, and if I had multiple patches in there, they would show up, but we only have that one. And there's our little kit. Okay, that should do for this video. I hope that for anyone out there thinking about picking up one of these samplers, this has been quite useful.